to filter hate messages. Again, just going by what this particular party is talking about, hate speech messages and the clips going round that sort of paint and tainted in a bad image. But again, you can remember that the Ministry of ICT said that we are a free state and hence we cannot do that because freedom of speech also lies within our constitution. So whether or not NCAC will be acting on that particular clip, that still remains a matter of wait and see. But remember, when it comes to the issue of leaflets, so far the Interior Ministry has arrested 8 persons who are suspected to have been the ones who have been circulating those particular leaflets in the county of Uasin Gishu. Away from matters to do with politics, I just want to take you through matters to do with food security, which is also again one of those stories that has clearly made its way on the front page of this particular daily. Looking at the details there, we remember that earlier on we had talked about the issue of drought as well as food security in our country, but also as it turns out we are now being urged to go back to indigenous foods just to improve diet as well as food security. And this also has been largely tied on the skyrocketing prices that we have been experiencing so far for the past few months when it comes to food commodities there. When you look at the skyrocketing prices of maize flour, so to speak, so this is this article is just trying to highlight here, just citing that the recent rise in the price of maize flour, popularly known in Kenya as unga, is a clear message to farmers, consumers, researchers and policy makers in our ailing food system to just try and look for other forms or indigenous foods, so to speak. But again, when we come to those details, I'll also be telling you what the CS of Agriculture said in respect to this indigenous foods. And again, what was also being profiled is that, is this the right time to be having this conversation of going back to indigenous foods just when we are in a crisis of matters to do with food security and the high prices of unga? Jane.
Now, coming back to the Daily Nation and the Star newspaper, there's one particular story that has been captured on both dailies. This is in regards to 12 voters, at least 12 voters. On the Daily Nation, they point out a different figure. But here on the Star, they point out that at least 12 voters want UDA out of the polls for nominating Gachagua as the running mate for Deputy President William Ruto. But generally, they're speaking about the same story. So the story focuses on a group of activists that want Gachagua, Sakaja, and 12 other politicians barred from this year's polls. This is because they claim that these individuals have violated the Leadership and Integrity Act. This is in Chapter 6 of the Constitution by being involved in criminal activities, or rather being suspected of being involved in criminal activities. Here on the Star, they go on to give a list of these politicians. We have Rigathi Gachagua, Johnson Sakaja, Samuel Arama, Muthomi Njuki, John Waluke. We also have Evans Kidero, Anne Waiguru, Aisha Jumwa, Okoth Obado, Mohammed Ali, Oscar Sudi, and Ali Korani. So these are the individuals that this particular group of activists want the courts to bar them from participating in this year's general elections, and they also want UDA to be collectively barred from, or rather deregistered by the Registrar of Political Parties for having nominated Gachagua, knowing fully well that he was suspected in a particular case that, of course, we got the final hearing for. So now they go on to say that UDA specifically has shown radical indifference. Oh, lawyers and these big words. They've shown radical indifference towards its duty to ensure fidelity to integrity and leadership values as a party. So now they want this process to be expedited, given we have about how many days to go to the polls? Less than about 5 days to vote, and they want this matter to be expedited, and we get to hear the final ruling by Monday, a day before the polls. And on the other hand, you're looking at the fact that ballot papers have already been printed. Any of these individuals looking at the different offices that they're running for, those that are running for elective positions, the ballot papers have already been printed. We're just awaiting the formal notification by the IEBC that everything is set and have been sent out to the different polling centers. So what does this even mean? Like, should they be officially barred from participating? but the ballot papers have already been printed. Doreen, will they go and cancel out the name in every ballot paper to just make sure that this individual does not get voted for? You know, election preparation is a very sensitive time, and having cases like this being brought up just 5 days to the general elections is quite concerning when it comes to the preparation of even this particular group. Like, you knew you wanted to do this, but you have to wait until the last minute because it costs money to print these ballot papers.
And you can remember also that's what largely locked out Ruben Kigame, because IBC was saying that we'll need
to reprint
almost 1 million just to have his name, and this is only one individual on the ballot. And again, just as you rightly put it, Jen, this is why IBC is also talking about the 11 counties whereby they still have these unresolved cases. So the question is, you are raising a very good question, because these names are already on the ballot. Why? Because they were already cleared, and now they are presidential
deputy
candidates,
presidential, among many others.
Exactly. So you can imagine that these names are already on the ballot. In the event that now the court rules otherwise, what happens? Or in the event that these cases, which are already in court in this particular 11 counties, and then the case rules in favor of them, will they include these names on the ballot? So it's a catch-22 kind of situation, and it also puts the country in a place of Kenyans thinking then maybe we are not ready for these elections.
And then the other, the law clearly says you're innocent until proven guilty.
Exactly.
But this particular group of activists, they go on to say, I don't know if it's here on the Daily Nation or the Star, that, as I drop my paper, that the concept of innocent until proven guilty, the presumption rather of the declaration of innocent until proven guilty does not apply to criminal suspect seeking elective seats.
But the law is not selective at the end of the day. It needs to be cutting across.
Well, that's that particular story. It's both on the Daily Nation as well as the Star. And given today is Entertainment Thursday, on the front page of the Daily Nation, there's a story concerning Sauti Sol. We all love Sauti Sol. I love Sauti Sol. So they, about 4 years ago, they got a record deal with Universal Records. But they recently disclosed on their social media platforms that they have broken ties with this particular record label. And this is because, one, their contract was nearing its expiry, and it was either they renew it or they break ties. And they chose to break ties in order to focus on their own record label, Soul Generation. But looking at the time that they were under Universal Records, they were able to put out one of their most popular albums, Midnight Train, but they, according to Bien, who is one of the band members, went on to say that they are now focusing on producing their next album, which will be fully produced under their record label, Soul Generation. And this is a move that many people have had different opinions about, but personally, looking at the fact that they decided as a group to break ties with such an international big brand like Universal Records to focus on a record label that is Soul Generation, that is back here at home, says a lot that we need to applaud.
Supporting our own.
Because, you know, looking at how much more they stood to gain with this record, as opposed to the much more work they need to put with their record label to ensure people that we can produce quality music, quality videos, quality artists, and make good money, is a move that we need to applaud.
Oh yes, and we're here to give you a quality show. But before we continue, time for a very quick break. We return with what the different dailies still are holding for you. Stay put.
The 2022 Commonwealth Games will be hosted in Birmingham, United Kingdom from the 28th of July through the 8th of August 2022. Team Kenya is set to make its 17th appearance at the Games. Kenya will contest for medals in several disciplines, among them athletics, boxing, hockey, rugby, weightlifting, wheelchair basketball and para-sports, among others. Watch the Games live on KBC Channel 1. KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
We can't continue to keep on living like this.
We made it, sweetie. Now Gonzalo will never find his money again. Never.
Lionel can't do that to you. No, he can't leave with the money that is mine and my son's to inherit. No.
I want to be with you and with our children. Because for me, Mao will be like my son.
That's why I'm backing her up with this marriage, and I am more than happy to do it. You do understand what I'm saying, right?
We have to find a way. And what could be better than to take away what you love the most?
Welcome back. You're still on Good Morning Kenya, and we continue with what the different dailies that we are holding for you this morning. And let's just come back to the Standard, still on the campaign trail with the different cases of violence that are now being recorded. And you can remember, this is why there's a clear message on just trying to ensure that we uphold peace in this particular election. And going by what we have here is that 745 women assaulted in campaigns. This is what this particular report now indicates. And now just these 745 women comprise of the aspirants together with their female supporters who were abused before, during party primaries. This is actually a report that was released by the Federation of Women Lawyers, that is FIDA, that revealed that. And also what is coming out is that a majority of the women who were subjected to electoral, sexual and gender-based violence were from Siaya County, which had 59 cases, followed by Kisumu and Nairobi counties with the 40 assault cases. So Siaya takes the bulk of most of these cases, whereby sexual and gender-based violent cases have been reported in the country in respect to particularly women, the women aspirants or women candidates in the various seats there. Away from that, we now look at that story concerning the Form 34As and Bs and what IBC now is saying. Remember that earlier on IBC had talked about having two Form 34As, and the question was then, where does that leave the Form 34B, or what will be the work of that? Remember, within our constitution, we need to just be having one Form 34A and one Form 34B. 34As, which is supposed to be used in the polling station, and then that transferred to the returning officers, whereby they need to be filling that in the Form 34B. But now IBC has come to well explain this, and I'll just run you through basically what they talked about in respect to this. And they say that complaints or discrepancies that may arise in Form 34A will only be resolved by the Supreme Court through a presidential election petition. IBC declaration also means that should any of the presidential candidates or agents point out discrepancies in results captured from the Form 34A, then only remedy is to file an election petition at the Supreme Court. He further on just went on to say this was in respect to the chairperson responding to Azimio, One Kenya and Kenya Kwanza formation. You can remember, again, this is also one of those times where we saw the two main frontrunners closing ranks on a particular issue in respect to this election. And so in response to this, this concerns, so to speak, about the result declaration of the form known as the Form 34A. Chebukati also said at the close of the voting, the presiding officer is required to count votes and enter results in Form 34A. Take a scanned image of this particular form are using the KIMS kit and transmit the image to the National Tallying Center. And also, just continuing by that address, is that he explained that the constituency returning officer is required to collect all Form 34As, prepare Form 34B, and submit all Form 34As together with Form 34B to the presidential returning officer. So clearly just going to show you that the earlier directive of having 2 Form 34As is not going to be in play. Countering that is that we're going to be having only 1 Form 34A as it needs to be, and the Form 34B. So that on the polling station as well as it to be used by the returning officer there. Again, also the issue of having the manual register is again coming to the fore. We also expect the courts to address that. Remember that IEBC had really said that their primary source of identification will be the KIMS kit. That is the technology there. If things turn a bit worse, then they might resort to the alphanumeric form of identification, and if things get really thick, that is just when they might resort to the manual register. But again, key concerns being profiled is that at the end of the day, that still needs to be at the various polling stations. So we're waiting to see how that court ruling is going to be looking like, whether or not they're going to be asking IBC to, at the end of the day, ensure that they have the manual register at the polling stations. Jane.
All right, let me now touch on a bit of health here on the Star. There's a piece concerning the state of the fight against teen pregnancies, gender-based violence, and HIV and AIDS infections. A while back, there was also a piece on this particular, focusing on this particular aspects on the Daily Nation, and the ministry, and this was according to a report that was put out by the Ministry of Health, courtesy of Dr. Masdi Mwangangi, at an event that was hosted by the National AIDS Control Agency, where they said the biggest triple threat to teen and adolescent girls remain to be early pregnancies, gender-based violence, and HIV and AIDS infections. So this particular story here focuses on the efforts that the state needs to make in order to curb this particular vices, saying that the state should be intentional in this particular fight, with the country that has over 75% of its population being youthful, that are aged between 18 and 35 years of age, adolescents being categorized those between 10 and 24 years old, and this is according to the 2019 census. When it comes to reproductive health outcomes in our country, they remain wanting. Now, looking at these three factors, and given the fact that Kenya was recently ranked 3rd worldwide when it comes to teen pregnancies, and this is also backed by the information that was put out by the Ministry of Health earlier on in the year, between the months of January and February, there were a total 45,700 cases that were recorded of teen pregnancies of girls aged between 10 and 19. Looking at new HIV infections, it was put at 98 new weekly cases. Every week, 98 new HIV infection cases were reported of teens that were aged between 12 and 17 years of age, man. It's very sad, but they go on to say that the lack of political goodwill and a conducive legal policy and environment continues to be one of the biggest challenges when it comes to addressing this issue, and also the conversation around unsafe abortions, saying that ignoring the impact that unsafe abortions has on our young girls and burying our heads in the sand will continue to be a pain in our back, and we need to handle this matter head on. So you can go ahead and read more of that here on the Star. Doreen.
Yeah, let's still stick with the Standard, and this is in respect to the slashing of allowances for the members of parliament. This is a recommendation that has just been recently given by the SRC, and it has obviously elicited mixed reaction amongst Kenyans, amongst the lawmakers. Just to go by what some of them are saying, is that there's one who says that I firmly endorse the move by the Salaries Commissions to slash allowances and car grants for legislators, as this will go a long way in saving on taxpayers' money. Remember that MPs as well as senators, they have different sittings in parliament. I think MPs is about 4 a week, and MPs is 5, senators should be 4 per week, and every of this seating these allowances allocated to them. So what had been coming out is that if they are elected to be in parliament, to represent, legislate, oversight, whichever role it is they're doing, and they are paid for this job at the end of the day, then why again are they being given allowances? And their job just entails being there. They're coming up with these laws, policies, could be in parliament or in the different house committees. So clearly, looking at that move by SRC to particularly scrap the allowances of the plenary sitting is what I'm just saying has really elicited a mixed reaction. But again, also what is being profiled is that once we see the 13th parliament coming to office after this election, they're just saying that this could be one of those conversations in parliament, and just this move by SRC might not really sit well with them, and they might just again also end up scrapping it off. So we wait to see how all that will be looking like, because what really is really coming out is that this is for the benefit of the taxpayers at the end of the day. Away from that, let's quickly look at this particular article on the various alternatives that we might just be trying to look into as a country when it comes to food, and particularly carbohydrates. And this has also been occasioned by the high rise of unga prices. We are alive to the fact that yes, the state has reduced that from the previous price of around 210 to 100 shillings thereabout. But again, remember, this is very limited, because as they mentioned is that this is supposed to take place only in 4 weeks. So it simply means that after the election, or slightly after that, we might just be going back to the previous price of this particular commodity. So which alternatives are in existence for Kenyans amid this high cost of this kind of commodity? Just going by what we have here, and again citing the issues that have also got us to this particular point, citing the issue of the rains, which as predicted by the Met Department, they were below average, and farmers in despair. They have just been watching as their crops dry, and so they do not really have an alternative, so to speak. But food aid dispensed in these areas is below, again, also the food requirements of the household, but it is giving hope to mothers that their children have something little to eat in the hope for better days. So looking at these alternatives that are being put forth includes sweet potatoes, cassavas, arrowroots, bananas, yams, sorghum, millet. I mean, Jane, do you think it's time that we need to start thinking of something different except just unga ya ugali na ugali kila wakati? Think of cassavas, of yams.
It's interesting because some of those are considered traditional meals.
Yes.
And sainde watu wanaanza kurealize, we need to go back to this. But they've always been there. Mm-hmm. They've always been a healthy alternative, especially for things like bread. You can always switch it up for that. But ugali is big. Ugali.
It's our staple
You're not
food.
Kenyan if you don't appreciate ugali. So I understand the need for you to just have ugali, at least even if it's just once a week. But hey, to each their own.
So you're saying we can't quite substitute. We can have this, but to see now we are doing away with
kuachilia ugali kabisa.
It's strict.
And you actually see how much more it's valued by people who maybe travel outside the country and go to spaces where this particular brands of maize flour are not available. Even sausages, people always complain sausages za home, sausages za Kenya, compared to those from different countries, they just hit different. So kuna kutu wako kautamu.
Yeah, and actually just the other day the CS for Agriculture Munya came under the fire for telling Kenyans that we need to be substituting this, and the question was, why? Because is this coming at this time? When we are in this food crisis, do we need to look at long-term solutions as opposed to just short and mid-term?
And it remains to be one of the most affordable forms of meal for most Kenyans.
Exactly.
So when the prices go up on that, what other alternatives are you proposing we go for? Because trust me, other alternatives would cost more.
Yeah.
All right. Now, let me bring you finally to this last story here on the Daily Nation. A report that was put out by FIDA that listed 14 counties that are most hostile to women when it comes to this campaigning period. And Siaya is at the top of this list, followed by Kisumu, then Nairobi County. Now the others are Kericho, Marsabit, Kisii, Nakuru, Vihiga, Busia, Narok, Kitui, Kitui, Bomet, Uasin Gishu, and Mombasa. These are the 14 counties that have been termed as most hostile for women, and especially during these periods that we are in this electioneering space. And they go on to advise women to be more vigilant, to be alert during this particular campaigning period, building up to the big day that is the 9th of August. So you can read more of that here on the Daily Nation. D. Kwako sasa.
Let me just stick on the election matters. And Jen, you really mentioned that, just 4 days to the polls in terms of campaign. This is 48 hours, according to our constitution, whereby meetings and campaigns need to end. And we are seeing the two main front runners really going back to those areas which are normally termed as strongholds, particularly for each of them. And there's also a clear way in which you're seeing them, particularly going back to the Mount Kenya region and specifically Kiambu County. Remember that Kiambu County is the second county with the highest number of voters. This is after Nairobi, about 1.3 to 1.4 million voters. This is after Nairobi, which is 2.4 million voters. So when you look at these particular places, clearly one of those areas where you'd really be seeing these candidates going to. And just going by what we have here is that the DP addressed campaign rallies in various centers in Kirinyaga and Kiambu counties. This is just a few days after his main opponent, that is Raila Odinga, visited the area with his running mate Martha Karua. So what you're seeing right here is that what we call the undoing, doing, redoing. So when we have one candidate going to Kiambu today, we are having the other one go there, tomorrow, 2 days after. And again, we also had a report which released just the number of times that these candidates have been to these areas, particularly as we mentioned the strongholds. And we look at Mount Kenya to be specific, countless number of times that they have been there. Remember that what we have had so far is that if Raila Odinga really has to come out as the winner, then there's a certain threshold that he needs to at least close in that particular region. Then we have, if DP has to come out as the winner, then we are being told that ideally he needs to continue regaining ground in that area. So if you see them going to this area just 48 hours or particularly 4 days to the polls, it's quite significant for this candidate. So that's what we have here. And also this particular report again highlights the poll ratings by the various pollsters. Remember that as of yesterday, which was August 3rd, was actually the last day to ever conduct and release polls. And that is also within our constitution. So it means from today onwards up until the election, we will be having no opinion polls from any pollster, because they're hard up until yesterday to do that. And we've also seen quite a number of polls just being released either by Ipsos or Infotrack in this past few days. So that is what you have on the different dailies that we had for you this morning. Jane, Tukimaliza, we do believe you're now best positioned to grab whichever daily best resonates with you. But you can always keep talking to us. Let us know where you're watching us from. We are using the hashtag Good Morning Kenya on Twitter. Our official station handle ever remains to be at KBC Channel 1. My handle is at Jane Wambui. My coach is at Doreen Arangi. We take a musical break, but we'll be back to continue with Good Morning Kenya and all the goodness, all the good that we have lined up for you. Do stay with us.
In the sprawling suburbs of Nairobi's Langata estate, we visit Bwen Eve Studios.
Right now you're in the studio, and studio entails a lot of things. As you can see, you might think these are decorations. These are not decorations, these are acoustic forms that are used for, at least to reduce echo. Between this and the main wall, we have another treatment. We put something called rock wool. Some people put foam, and then you put gypsum, and then you put this. This one is just to reduce echo. But the main soundproof is behind this at the gypsum.
Studio gear are the main tools used in this production process.
Well, these are MIDI controllers. Some people will call them keyboard, but they're not keyboards. These are MIDI controllers. the control sound that we have on our DAW. DAW is our digital software that we use to record. We have so many kind of those softwares, but as we use the one that is called Logic. Then of course our computer, studio monitors, sound card, and that's our booth where there's microphone and our musicians sing from that side.
The song production process involves different kinds of sounds and instruments. So, what is the first step in the music production process?
He comes, we create from nothing to something. So we started by listening to his idea. I captured it immediately. I had to look for tempo. Tempo is the speed. Every song must have a constant speed and time signature. In music, they call it time signature. So we look for the time signature.
Some songs call for outsourcing of live instruments.
At some point, we usually outsource now live instruments, because when there's some songs, if you put live instruments, it gives the song very, very good classical sound.
But does everybody who comes to the studio qualify as a musician?
There's some who have money, but they can't sing. And even if you train them, you take them to school, they can't sing, but they're passionate about it. And that those who are just gifted. They come the first day, you listen to them, you're like, hey, we're working with this one. Again, they don't struggle.
The process begins when the producer meets with the musician in studio. Today, this singer is doing his own rendition over him.
I bless the Labrador and Souls of World, so I go by the name Real Man Redemption International.
The songwriting can happen before or after the artist comes to studio.
How I write my music? I really don't write my music at home. I love writing my songs in studio, because being inspired while the producer is just playing the keys, the keyboards.
The producer then sits down with the artist to get the general idea of what the singer wants.
There's this old version song named
The producer kickstarts by finding a tempo. The tempo gives the song speed. Next, the producer finds the chords that will be a bed on which the instrumentation is laid.
Okay, so we try to get something.
Sometimes the song would demand for extra help from another specialist.
The other producer, so he came to help me to put some drums.
After that is done, the vocals are added.
Yeah.
The singer's voice is captured through the microphone. The audio file is then brought to the sound card. It comes as an analog, but the sound card changes the sound itself to digital through their computer software. This fine to the process, everything is considered as a demo, meaning there's room for more changes to be added to the instrumentation and the beat production.
The first instrumentation was the keyboard, the piano sound. Actually, I layered. Layered is whereby you mix more than one instrument at the same time, and then you play on the keyboard. So I layered electric piano or e-piano. I layered piano itself, and then some strings.
Next comes the mixing.
Mixing means positioning each and everything where it's supposed to be. You know, every instrument has a frequency, making sure that every instrument falls in the right frequencies and then also falls in the right position.
After the mixing is done, the song is mastered.
Making sure that every voice sits in its position. We pan. Like here you see we are panning left or right or center, you get it? You see, this one is when we pan at the same time. We use some plugins also just to make sure that our voice sounds the way we want.
Mastering is the final stage in the music production process.
And then we have a song.
After the song has been mixed and mastered, the product is now considered ready for market. Reporting for KBC from Langata in Nairobi County, I'm Nisi Imano.
My kids are always on their devices. Kila saa.
Mommy, look, I'm a cyber soldier.
Huyu, he's always on his social. But online ina mambo mengi. It's a new world of risks.
The Communications Authority of Kenya, CA, manages Kenya's cyberspace to keep you and your family safe online so you can learn, interact, and thrive online.
Na mimi, can I be a cyber soldier too?
The Communications Authority of Kenya, opening your world.
We can't continue.
Made it, sweetie. Now Gonzalo will never find his money again. Never.
Lionel can't do that to you. No, he can't leave with the money that is mine and my sons to inherit. No.
I want to be with you and with our children. Because for me, Mao will be like my son.
That's why I'm backing her up with this marriage, and I am more than happy to do it. You do understand what I'm saying, right?
Only have to find a way. And what could be better than to take away what you love the most?
The 2022 Commonwealth Games will be hosted in Birmingham, United Kingdom from the 28th of July through the 8th of August 2022. Team Kenya is set to make its 17th appearance at the Games. Kenya will contest for medals in several disciplines, among them athletics, boxing, hockey, rugby, weightlifting, wheelchair basketball, and parasports, among others. Watch the Games live on KBC Channel 1. KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
ya freedom fighter, niko free filanga. Cheki around vile wa Kenya tumejipanga. Tunapendana kama ndugu, tunajengana, kushikana ndio mambo tunaduka wangwana.
Ipeperushwe juu sana, bendera yetu Kenya. Ipeperushwe juu sana, sisi wa Kenya tunaweza Kenya utantena. Ipeperushwe. Rais Kenyatta alituletea uhuru Kenya. Rais Moi akatuletea maziwa ya Nyayo. Rais Kibaki akatuletea masomo ya bure. Rais Uhuru ametuletea maendeleo Kenya. Rais Uhuru akatuletea ugatuzi Kenya. Daima mimi Mkenya. Oh Kenya, naipenda Kenya. Oh Kenya, ipeperushwe juu sana, bendera yetu Kenya. Ipeperushwe juu sana, sisi wa Kenya tunawe. Ipeperushwe.
Exactly 5 minutes past the top of the hour. We now continue with the program, and obviously time for our first conversation this Thursday morning. It is all about matters elections, just looking at, how this is tied to different entities in our country. And right now we look at how entertainment is tied to elections in terms of peace, propagating the peace message. This is what you're set to converse with my guest and Wako Hapa, music artist. Should I say artist, music artist?
Yeah,
Zote ziko sawa.
Yeah.
To my immediate right, that is Felix Ayoga. Is it?
Yeah. Felix
Ayoga. And then right next to him is Harry Obonyo.
Yeah.
Karibuni sana to the program.
Asante sana.
Na umevaa t-shirt zenye zinasema amani ni muhimu.
Peace muhimu sana yani.
Peace ni muhimu.
Yeah, hasa kwa mayouth. Lazima tueneze peace sana.
Tueneze peace.
Yeah.
You are an artist in your own define.
Yeah.
Which kind of music do you do? Because I know we will come to you. We've done a conversation with you before. But which kind of music do you do?
I do gospel, urban gospel. I have my own style called Zakiro style music. One of fuse Kiswahili Luya version. Still I'm a producer. Yeah. Yeah.
So basically gospel is your kind of music.
Yeah.
Hata yako Felix ni gospel.
I just do gospel.
Gospel
ministry
yani. Ministry. Not a gospel artist but a gospel minister.
Yeah.
All right, now let's just go to the conversation. Say tunana wasanii wengi, and I keep saying actually, art is holistic. It cuts across, from music to drawing, to acting, theater. Na wengi wao wanajitokeza wako pale nje wanasema message ya peace, it's important. Just talk to me how important this is, and particularly coming from a young person. Pale nje anasema we have to ensure that we keep and maintain peace in this election. Let me start with you, Felix.
One thing, umemwa peace. Unaweza ama nikisema kuongelea peace, unajua once tuko na amani katika Kenya, utapata tunasonga mbele sana. But tukiwa na ile mambo disagreements labda ama politicians ama wale wenye tumechagua, unajua kiongozi si tutavote tu, but Mungu ndo anatupea kiongozi bora, unaona. So yule mwenye atakuwa tukiamua ni yeye na tumsupport, Kenya itaenda mbele sana. Lakini tukikaa chini tukianza kuthink about ati mimi nipigane na ndugu yangu yule tunasol na pesa kidogo tunapata 100-150, nimekupiga wewe ama nimechoma kibanda yako, nitakosa mali, nitakula mboga wa kesho na utatoroka. Mimi utakosa client na mimi utanikosa hata pesa yangu kidogo, unajua. So ukitoka pale, kwa hiyo ni ya kibanda seme economically tarudi ni chini sana. Juu utapata tumechoma inji, tuna deni tayari, vitu yenyafaa tuko tunalipa, unaona. So tutakuwa tumerudi nyuma, makampuni zimefunga, watu wafanye kazi, yani tutakuwa economically tutakuwa tumeenda tu chini sana. So that's why tumekuja kama maboys tukasema ama vijana wadogo to preach to peace na tushikane, tufanye kazi, ile kiongozi atakuwa Mungu akisema ndo huyu, tushikane na tumsupport. Yani kila kitu kitakuwa sawa na Kenya itasonga mbele sana.
Harry, I mean, you could have decided mimi nafanyanga muziki ya gospel, so I mean I may just be here and continue doing my music, wasanii wengine wanafanya. But why was it important for you just to come out as an artist? Because tena nasema usanii ni kioo cha jamii, so art plays a very big role in our society. Why did you feel the need to come out and just be an agent, a champion?
Okay, what I trust, what I believe ni hata ukitumia tu for example as a person like hata kama una peace in your heart, like unapatanga like everything I run. So I worked on, nilikaa chini nikathinka imefika high time we do something like peace, cause without peace, when to my brother amesema, without peace vitu haziwezi run, cause itabidi maybe my brother is tribe ABCD, me I'm tribe ABCD, so when we fight unapata kama alikuwa mama mboga pale naelewa hayuko tena, naelewa, so sina that thing. So na watu wengi wenye wanakujanga like kusumbua sana like kama kufight ama kusumbuana most ni mayouth, kwa sababu ndio wanatumia vibaya, wanapewa pesa kidogo nini, anasumbua brother yake mwenye kesho atamuomba kitu yenye anaweza saidia. So that's why sisi tulisema like kwa sababu sisi ni mayouth, I think tunaweza ongea language yenye youth pia kwa pale China anaweza sema kama ni mayouth ana preach wanataka like tuache, maybe wanaweza tuelewa more. So that's why ndiamua as a gospel artist pia hiyo song ukisikia tunaomba most tumeiweka like is a prayer, tunaomba kama unataka like nini uweze enda side fulani uambie mtu, but ukiwa kwa nyumba you can pray na Mungu apitie kwa prayer pia aongee na your brother na to keep peace pia. Yeah.
Felix, I mean, and we will come to, you know, the youths as we momentarily continue this conversation, but let me come to you, Felix. Tuambie tu, yes, we understand the whole idea of what you guys are doing, because as I said, wasanii wengi wanafanya, you know, peace initiatives hapa nje. But concept ilianza vipi, given the fact that mpaka sasa mko na branded, you know, kind of clothing, t-shirts, and even in that song you people, all of you actually are branded. Felix, tuambie more about how the initiative just came about.
Song ojo mostly
because the song is 3 weeks old, is it?
Ngoma tulika nilikuwa ni nini rafiki yangu hapa Iniesta alinipigia simu, is a producer, ndio akovienda song. Akanambia
idea ni yeye.
Akanambia Sule, what can we do? Nikamwambia election ndio hii, tuko na machine, tunaweza fanya ngoma ya peace. So akanambia we can plan a day to meet studio, at least tuongee na sana wenzetu wengine tunawak nao, wakam studio, at least we can have an idea, then put something on the paper, have to release. So then we had to plan for a day. Nikafika studio, nikapata ameonda kitu kidogo, tukajaza, nikaweka chorus, tukawa tumeshikana sana wengi. So tulikuwa wengi, wasanii kadha studio ya tulifanya nao. So tukawa tunathink about, tunajua peace, idea yetu ilikuwa all about peace. So tukasema tukifanya ngoma ya peace, ama tuseme tukifanya ngoma tunajibamba itakuwa na hii situation ya peace itakuwa na sense vile. So tukakuja pamoja, tukashare ideas. Tukaamua tufanye tu audio ama tufanye mpaka na video. Tukasema video inaweza kuwa more better, at least tunaweza enda mahali hasa naweza tuona, unaona. So nikaongea na studio ya shoot, after kufanya audio tukaamua tujibrand, so wenyewe tukangana, then tukaamua kufanya video.
Producer, hii si kitu rahisi kufanya. Just listening to what Felix anasema, I mean, clearly looks like a lot went into this. And also, you know, you'll be telling us if at all kuna in different places where you're going in terms of championing for peace, ama tu ni pale as long as you release the song and that's it. But talk to us also about how the budgeting went to this, because again, we'll play this video. Na Wakenya wataona, by the way, iko kwa kitu rahisi kufanya. I mean, the work that has gone here just to ensure that the message is out there. Talk to us about the process, the budgeting, how all this went into mpaka tuko na the final product.
Okay, me ni producer, but for as an artist, venye nilikuja kuwa producer nilikuwa natafuta kitu something inaweza kuwa na impact pia, not all about peace, but sit na kuanga is like a group pia inaitwa Generation Good Forever.
You were actually a group, eh?
Yeah.
Okay.
GGF. So tunafanya awareness za drugs, tunafanya the charity events pia. So this time nika feel because ni time ya election hatuwezi fanyia ati politician song, hiyo ni one side. But wacha tufanya awareness about peace. So niko na wasanii ni wengi, but time yenyewe unawakingi na artist ama ukiwa kwa group unaweza jua nani anaweza fanya hii, and so the first person to call alikuwa my friend nini Felix, ndio nilimcall nikamwambia ni aje niko na idea hivi na hivi, akakuja. So tuka create idea sketch, tukaita the other artist tukafanya. So tukapanga okay, for me nilikuwa nataka tufanye audio kwa sababu tulikuwa na siku kidogo sana. But yeye akaniambia hapana, tunaweza combine tufanye hadi video. So yeye ufanya kwa film brand, huwa ina shoot ma videos. So akaniambia wacha tu record the audio, then sasa tutafute venye tunaweza shoot. That's why tulikama up na idea. Okay, hizi kuwa rahisi kwa sababu pia unajua mkiwa group kuna wale lazima msumbuane kidogo, but vizuri kila mtu alikuwa anaipata in a positive way. So ilikuwa so rahisi sana ku coordinate between us. Yeah.
So unasema that also in this group you are also out there just creating awareness. We mentioned substance abuse. I know pia Vatas group end violence in a feature pale. Talk to us about the kind of awareness you do and which areas do you really take?
Okay, we do most drug kwa sababu mimi nimelelewa sana side za Gashie. Kwa side ya Kiambu. So nimegrow nikiona my youth. Most my youth wanakuja wanapotea drugs, ama mtu alikuwa na talent but ameingia kwa drugs anakuja anapotea hivyo. So nikigrow nilikuwa na one time nikifika level yenye ninaweza kukuwa na create my events, mimi kufanya ma open air hizi. Naweza fanya open air, tunatafuta wase, kuna maboys wenye walikuwa wanafanya drugs, so tunawa approach as a group pia. Tunawaambia hivi na hivi, kama wanapenda entertainment. Unajua mtu sometimes anaingianga kwa hizi mambo za drugs not because anataka, ni kwa sababu anakuja sometimes ako idol, maybe ana job na nini. But if mnafanya something yenye kama mnaenda the charity event, ako busy, unapata ana hiyo time ya drugs. So kuna wengi sana ukimit kama GGF group, wengi watakwambia mimi ndiko addicted sana na hii, mimi ndiko addicted na hii. So I think not all about us, but najuanga God ndiye amepitia tu kwa that vision, ndio inasaidia. But mostly tunafanya ngizo ma open airs, tunafanya Gashie, tunaenda Rwaka, tunafanya Roysambu, yani tunazunguka tu penye tumefeel tunaweza. So ile finance yenye tuko nayo kidogo, kama inaweza tufikisha place huko tutaenda. Yeah, but sasa kwa sababu hatujagrow sana, hatujaenda so many places, but God akifungua tutajaribu cover Nairobi, ndio tujaribu kwenda nje ya Nairobi sasa. Yeah.
So ideally kuna plans to expand boards. Well said. Now, I mean, Felix, just borrowing also from what Harry is saying in terms of akiongelea, particularly when it comes to substance abuse, the young people oftentimes wako vulnerable, wengi pia wako pale idle. Ukiangalia the 2019 census, which was released in 2020, the report indicates that 5.3 million, Kenyans youth bado wako jobless out of the possible 13.7. Na sasa wakati wa election tunasema tena again, these young people are still vulnerable. A lot of these issues there, it's tied down to matters of employment, unemployment. Tazama wako ni upi?
Kitu naweza sema ama kwambia mayouth enyewe, unajua hakuna politician atakuja kupe job ama akupe food. What you do venye
washa promise
but hata unajua mtu anaweza kupromise lakini hata fulfill. Unajua mwanadamu si Mungu, unaona. What you are supposed to do, hii drug hii kitu inafanya ati wewe unakuwa na offset mind. Drug mbona uendelee kutumia? Acha na drug, try ku hustle, fanya anything yenye inaweza keep busy, unaona. So politician akikwambia nitakuletea food ama nitachimba nini, nitafanya nini, hiyo yani ni kitu ya maybe vision 2030. So kitu mimi naweza advise my youth, anything that you are doing, stay focused, fanya kazi ya mkono yako. Hata watu wanafanya mjengo na bado wanaishi vizuri, unaona. So just hustle na ufanye UTBD yani. Usiji contradict na maana politician asikudanganya hata kufanya kitu fulani. Just work on your own, kila kitu kitakuwa poa.
But wanasema kazi tumetafuta na hatupati. So the only thing imebaki ni nikipatwa hii 200 100, that's what I'll use, because at the end of the day people will still say, not that I'm propagating for that, because I mean I'm totally against it, but then watakwambia nitaenda kukula nini, kazi nimetafuta nimekosa. So is there really a solution for this? You know why I ask that is because every particularly election period, youths huwa miss kwa wale wenye either they are propagating violence. At least we have those that are really out here championing for peace like you are doing. But when you look at even the category of those that are really propagating violence, majority in young people.
But kitu naweza sema, najua mtafutaji achoki. Niko 100% sure ukiamka asubuhi one week ukitafuta utakosa one way. Au utakosa mtu mmoja. Ukililia watu kama 5 ama 10, kuna mtu mmoja atakuunderstand. Pia wajua Mungu hata anaintervene, unaona. Okay, kama Mungu tu mbele na kila kitu kitakopoa. Yani try, amka asubuhi, nenda ungangane, uliza. Unajua ukiuliza hapo kutoka hapo mtu atakupea hope. Unajua kuna time unaweza tembea umetembea una feel umechoka. Unajua ile time una feel umefika mwisho, hapo ndio God anaanza kufunga njia zake, unaona. So just keep on pressing. Tafuta, useme ati hakuna kitu inaweza, hapana. Wewe ukichoka jua umepata. I'm 100% sure hata kama youth anasema watumika tu kufanya ni ile tu msana kuanga ako misleaded na kitu fulani yenye hizo ma drugs. But okay, stay to focus, utafute mazee. Sioni kama inaweza kuwa ile that difficult. God mimi nakuanga ni imani God will provide. Yeah.
So it still runs down to drugs, substance abuse. Naona hata Harry ana agree, it still runs down to drugs.
I think mnaweza add hapo kitu mimi naweza jua. Okay, si lazima pia uandikwe. Najua ukikuwa na ile mind lazima niandikwe, hiyo ndio inapoteza pia. Kuna so many things unaweza fanya. Not lazima uwe na much capital ndio maybe uanze something ya kufanya. Kuna majob hata watu tunaonanga like maybe for example wanauza kwa group, tuko na wase hata pia wanauza hizi mayai na nini. Si expensive.
So hawajakaa tu ati ni muziki peke yake ama ni art peke yake.
Lazima tutafute. Unajua hata kama ni muziki inataka pesa na pia tunataka kustay na nini. So lazima tuko na something pia yenye itafanya pia msakisha toka kwa drugs au utatembea tu na yeye na anarudi analala njaa. So lazima kuna something yenye itamkeep. So ukiangalia like kuna business hata ukiona 2000 utaanza ile kidogo, bora tu jioni ikifika unapata 50 kidogo yenye inaingia kwa mfuko important. But sasa ukikuwa na ile mind lazima niandikwe, naona sasa hii jobs haziko mob. So ni poa sana na venye tumekuwa kwa corona imefunza watu wengi sana. So sometimes ukiwa youth una think sana like think too about hapo pia.
So unasema there's actually more that young people can do ndo wasitumike vibaya vile ambavyo wanatumika, particularly wakati wa elections wa masaa kama saa hizi, that they need to think outside the box. So kuna kitu umesema that si lazima mtu akae kwa job ya kuandikwa. So in your perspective, do you think that it's actually it's a mind issue? As in, most of this, because I mean, actually, but this convo will revolve around, young people, because like we said, they're the most vulnerable in this election period, and you're here championing for peace. So do you think it's a mind issue that most young people have, that mimi kama nimeenda kampo, nimeenda shule na sijaandikwa, then I'll just wait, and then while you're waiting, unakuwa inducted to some of these things that we keep talking about here?
Yeah, of course. Wacha ni put in this way. Wacha nirudi kwa artist kidogo.
Okay.
Artist ni ule mtu mwenye maybe jini kishasonga kidogo, kuna vitu ana feel nikifanya mtaa atasema manze. The same to people.
Siwezi fanya business.
Watu wataniona hapo, unajua mimi nimeunda brand na nini, unaelewa. But sasa unajua brand without money si brand, unaelewa. So kitu inakuanga like the same watu wameenda pia campus. Wengine wanakuanga kuna wale wanajituma wa mind, wanajuanga day itafika. But kuna wale wenye wanasema nimeingia campus watu watanionaje. But sasa uwezi kaa hapo kwa sababu miaka pia inasonga, unaelewa. So but ukifanya kitu itakusaidia a step, kwa sababu ni kama ukiingia kwa gospel part. Uwezi tuambia Mungu like bless me una get na umeka. Lazima God akupate ukiwa ina relay, yani yenye uko in that process ya kutafuta kitu ndio a bless. Akikupata kama usha give up, akikubless utajua, utakuwa unasema connection ndio inasaidia. Kumbe uliomba time fulani ukaenda astray, amekubless una feel ni connection. But akikupatia ukiwa still in that relay ya kuomba, utajua maombi nimeomba ndio ime happen. So the same pia ni hivyo tu venye sasa youth wako. Kuna wale wana feel mimi nataka youth anataka aendeshe Range Rover na hata hakuna step anafanya yenye itampatia.
So politician akikuja aseme hata achukueni 50,000 yako very fast kuchukua.
Kwa sababu anaona ni haraka.
Okay, well said. So again, let me come to you, Felix. Then do you think politicians are also to blame? You know why? Is because just juzi, the interior CS said that ukiangalia the 200s and 100s are missing. Na wanasema ati wanasiasa wamechukua hizi pesa wanapeleka pale kwa campaign, wanapatia vijana. The other day IBC had actually capped the amount that politicians need to be spending on the campaign trail, but that was shot down by MPs in the National Assembly. So then it gave them a lifeline. Use whatever you want to use. Kama ni mabilioni, milioni, just use it. So then again, it also makes young people kuwa vulnerable, as you're saying. Kuja kupatia kama 50,000 ni quick money, hujafanyia kazi, unachukua very fast. Are they also to blame, politicians?
Yeah.
Ama as a young person wewe pia uko na msimamo wa kusema mimi sitachukua?
Wajua,
which way does it go?
Wajua, kwanza ama politician kitu wanafanya, wanaendanga zile place zenye wanajua watu wenye wako pale most ma hustlers. So anaona akikupea do, wajua mtu akipata pesa ushamcontrol.
Okay.
So tunaweza blame in another way around, ama pia tusiwa blame, but unaona once mimi ukinipa do, tuseme niko chini, sina form, yani na umenipea pesa unaambia nataka unifanyie kitu fulani, mimi najua sina anything, unajua na nimepata 50,000, obvious mazenta nitafanya kitu nataka.
So utachukua weka wewe tuseme ukuje umepatiwa, utachukua?
Kama mimi
utachukua wewe.
Mimi na mimi okay mimi mse napenda kuwako my own, unaona? Kwani unajua ukipata pesa na haraka ama pesa nyonja hujawakia siku zote wataizika, unajua? But unajua ukijua kumanage 100 bob utamanage milioni juu, utakuna steps umekuwa kaenda nayo. Lakini mimi ukinipa 50k sahi, kama nilikuwa labda naokoa yangu ya 1000 nalipa kwanza. Nilikuwa na shida fulani, so mimi naweza sema ma politician hata kugawa do, mimi siwezi ona kama ni solution sana ati utapata kura ama nini. Yeah, hiyo omba tu kura in a peaceful way at least my youth. Unajua ukipea youth, ukiambia youth mimi naomba kura yako, sina kitu, but nikifika pale tutasaidiana. Unajua politician anaweza kukumbuka, but politician akikuja hapa akupe 50k amebuy vote yako, huyu akienda anaenda kulipa hiyo do. So there's no way.
So wanasiasa waende tu waombe kura polepole.
Wakuje tu waombe kura, tutawapea wauze sera vizuri.
Wauze sera vizuri. Cha muhimu ni sera. They are saying that this election has become an issue based. Watu wana focus sana on the issues as opposed to ethnic as it were. But let me come to you, Harry, even as you wind down this conversation, still on the same point. Wanasiasa wako to blame, ama we can still say, as a young person, the politician X can come and give you, is it 1,000, 500 bob, 100 bob, na useme mimi kama kijana sitachukua, nimekataa tu.
Okay, for me mimi naweza sema hivi, like politician akikuja hapa na get anipatie do, mimi siwezi kudanganya nitachukua, but unajua siku ya voting nitachukua kwa sababu ashanipatia. Nitachukua kwa sababu kitu ya kwanza ni si ashanipatia na amekuja yeye mwenyewe kunipatia. But day ya kuvote sasa lazima nisikie pia sera za watu wote. So pesa zimekuja, but not kwa sababu nimechukua hizo pesa nitamvotia, kwa sababu sasa hapo ni kukua mwise. Lazima wasikize, usichukue tu kwa sababu nimechukua pesa, huyo ni mzuri. Chukua, msikize. Huyo mwingine ana msikize. Day ya kuvote sasa ni wewe mwenyewe, kwa sababu kwa ballot tunakuanga peke yako. Na hilo hawezi kuja na hizo 50, hata ukikataa si ataenda nazo. So ni kukua tu mwise time yenye una vote. Place important sana ni time una vote. Ni kukua mwise. Na penye una vote na penye manifesto ya mtu venye alisema. Hiyo ndio una work on. But hizi pesa kwenda kufaitia hizo pesa ndio vibaya. But kama amekuletea, so chukua ndo jijenge nazo baada ya kuvote kwa wise. Zile pesa zisikuchanganye pia.
You know why I was asking about that money issues, because venye tu umeisema wakati wanakuja na hizi pesa wale ambao huwa wanapeana, we always see violence. Watu wanapigananga pale, wanataka kuchukua pesa ya mwanasiasa. Wengine they even end up killing each other, injuring each other. So ni muhimu tujue it lies squarely with who the responsibility. Wewe ukipata utachukua ama wanasiasa tu kuja uze sera na tumalizie hapo.
If it's all about fighting for kufaitia pesa.
Because we witnessed that. We have, haven't we?
Mwanasiasa hizi kuja mahali kwa peke yako. Kitu kwanza anataka mahali kuna crowd.
Unajua sometimes the politicians wanafanyanga like maybe wanajua my youth wako place, we can meet, tuongee na nini, mnataka nini, nimewaletea pesa, ninaweza nini. Unaona, for example like hiyo group yetu ni GGF, politician amesema na to meet, wacha niwapatia 100,000. Naelewa but naomba mnivotie, tutamsikiza, but hizo 100 tutachukua kwa sababu by the end of the day tunataka mapie system za kufanyia awareness zetu, so tutazichukua, but pia sisi tukibaki, that's why nimesema ni about time yenye una vote, kukua tumwise, tutamsikiza, atupatie hizo pesa zake, tuone hizo manifesto yake iweze, but kwa sahizi pesa tunataka the pia ya kufanya awareness tuko nayo. So day tutavote, hata kuja sema ulinipigia kura kweli, hata jua. Naelewa. But by the end of the day, see, ati tutoke kama mayouth tunaenda for pesa, like tunaanza kufight. You see, right? Yeah.
Well said, well said. And mwisho wa siku, what you're saying is that ni muhimu, as you're saying, vote wisely, use wisdom, and keep peace alive. Sindio? We can all agree on that. And a good place to end this conversation. Asanteni sana for coming and just talking to us about the initiative that you're doing out there, particularly also for the young people, which is a very good initiative.
Thank you.
Good job. I have been speaking to Felix Ayoga to my immediate right, as well as Harry Obonyo, who are both gospel artists, but just given the kind of environment we are in as a country, they have been out there championing for peace and ensuring we vote in a very peaceful environment, particularly as young people. Good place to end this conversation, but Good Morning Kenya still continues after this break.
The Communications Authority of Kenya, CA, regulates the broadcasting industry, promoting development of local content and ensuring responsible use of broadcasting platforms for national good, to give you and your family choice with a variety of content to enjoy.
Money talks. You took me to the cleaners. My house now belongs to the bank. My business, kaput.
The booze won't make you any better.
Lower the helm, or better still, lose the meaning.
Say I'm pathetic, but you're the pathetic one. Firing me because my brother dumped you for a better woman?
The Communications Authority of Kenya, opening your world.
Kwa miaka 11 Minto FM imekuwa pamoja nanyi, ikiwapa burudani na kuwaelimisha. Na sasa tunawaalika mashabiki wetu tujumuike pamoja kwa tamasha la Minto Night. Tarehe 6 mwezi Agosti tutakuwa na Minto Night huko Winspark Resort Kisii. Wanamuziki kama vile Kwasa, Embarambamba na wengine watakuwa site kuwaburudisha. Siku ya Jumapili tarehe 7 Agosti, Minto FM itaandaa maombi ya shukrani na kuombea uchaguzi wa amani katika uwanja wa Itiero Primary School kuanzia saa 3 asubuhi. Waimbaji wa nyimbo za dini wakiwemo Evangelist Eric Mwaniki, Molly Kemunto na wengineo watakuwemo. Nyote mwalikwa.
Minto FM Enyakaruga Yomugusi.
Mimi niko digital sasa. Nimepiga simu nikauza ng'ombe, sasa naweza lipia mtoto karo ya shule. Huyu sasa shule anasoma kompyuta. Na kama mtoto akigonjeka, napigia daktari simu. Huko hospitali nasaidika haraka.
Through the Universal Service Fund, USF, the Communications Authority of Kenya, CA, facilitates the provision of diverse communication services to every part of the country so that no one is left behind. The Communications Authority of Kenya, opening your world.
The 2022 Commonwealth Games will be hosted in Birmingham, United Kingdom from the 28th of July through the 8th of August 2022. Team Kenya is set to make its 17th appearance at the Games. Kenya will contest for medals in several disciplines, among them athletics, boxing, hockey, rugby, weightlifting, wheelchair basketball and parasports, among others. Watch the Games live on KBC Channel 1. KBC Channel 1.
Mimi niko digital sasa.
Solidarity to our nation. Tuzidi kwa maombi, tuombe nchi yetu Kenya. Zidisha maombi, upendo, tupende nchi yetu Kenya.
Nataka tuanze kama anthem, wengine waiweke kama ringtone. My youth, tunataka peace, amani, upendo, wa Kenya tupendane.
Fight for the peace, nyeupe ya amani. Mbona tukose amani? Love for the people, nyeusi ya watu. Mbona tukose upendo?
Jana tusimame, tuijenge nchi yetu Kenya. Na amani tutangaze, tuachane ukabila ubinafsi.
Wabariki watimize ndoto zao, wape riziki katika nyumba zao, na kibali katika kazi zao.
We need peace, love and solidarity to our nation. We need peace, love and solidarity to our nation. Tuzidi kwa maombi, tuombe nchi yetu Kenya. Zidisha maombi, upendo, tupende nchi yetu Kenya.
Mama don't cry, daddy don't cry, my youth tunataka amani. Nasema no crime, no, we say no fight, no. Pamoja tueneze umoja,
tusimame imara, tusipotoshwe na ukabila. Tusamehane, tuinuane, tujengane kwa umoja.
Upendo, amani, dongao, tushikane. Upendo, amani, donguzo, tuungane. We need peace, love and solidarity to our nation. We need peace, love and solidarity to our nation. Tuzidi kwa maombi, tuombe nchi yetu Kenya. Zidisha maombi, upendo, tupende nchi yetu Kenya.
Kenya Worship Center, Kenya God Nation. As a black man represent number one color. Hili ya amani, tatu ni nyekundu. Tusonge hapo chini, kijani kibichi.
Vita za nini? Visa za nini? Wakati mimi na wewe ni ndugu. Vita za nini? Visa za nini? Wakati mimi na wewe ni ndugu.
Kwa upendo na umoja iwe ndio ngao yetu. Kwenye chuki, ukabila na uovu tukomeshe. Kwa amani tusimame na Kenya tusonge mbele. Haki itendeke na tuishi kama madugu.
Acha tushikane, tusizikane. Tuwe pamoja, kitu kimoja, tusikwazane. We need peace, love and solidarity to our nation. We need peace, love and solidarity to our nation. Tuzidi kwa maombi, tuombe nchi yetu Kenya. Zidisha maombi, upendo, tupende nchi
say na washow. Tusipochunga Vision 2030 itakuwa Vision 3020. Violin.
Fahari yetu, undugu ndio nguvu, chuki na ukabila hatutaki hata kamwe. Lazima tuungane, tuijenge nchi yetu, pasiwe hata mmoja anayetenganisha. Tumaini najitolea daima Kenya, hakika ya bendera ni uthabiti wangu, nyeusi ya wananchi na nyekundu ni ya damu, kijani ni ya ardhi, nyeupe ya amani. Daima mwananchi mzalendo. kujenga kwetu, akiwe ngao na mlinzi, na tukae na udugu, amani na huru, ratupate na ustawi. Kenya ni nchi ya amani, tusikubali siasa zitutenganishe. Kenya ni nchi ya upendo, tusikubali wale watutenganishe. Kenya yetu ni nchi ya furaha, tusikubali vita vitutenganishe. Kenya ni nchi ya upendo, ukabila isiwe lugha yetu. Undo wakati wa kung'ang'ana tujenge Kenya, nchi yetu inayopendeza, furaha iliyoje watu wakikaa pamoja, tena kwa umoja na kupendana. Mungu akamwambia Musa, enda uokoe taifa langu, watoe watu wangu mikononi mwa Farao. Bwana natumana katika nchi yetu, lazima tupate ushindi. Haleluya. Wewe ni Mkenya tena ni mzalendo, usikubali kupiganishwa na ndugu yako. Mambo ya siasa yacho usiweke moyoni, muombe Mungu tu na tuwe salama. Usikubali kupigana na mwenzako. Ndugu dada, tengeneza njia zako. Yeye ni Mungu, ataikumbuka Kenya. Kenya yetu, nchi ya amani. Amkeni ndugu zetu, na tufanye sote bidii, nasi tujitoe kwa nguvu. Nchi yetu ya Kenya iwe amani tunayoipenda, tuwe tayari kuilinda. Kenya ni nchi ya amani, tusikubali siasa zitutenganishe. Kenya ni nchi ya upendo, tusikubali wale watutenganishe. Kenya yetu ni nchi ya furaha, tusikubali vita vitutenganishe. Kenya ni nchi ya upendo, ukabila isiwe lugha yetu.
City Sounds Production.
Nilifurahi waliponiambia tuende nyumbani mwa Bwana. Nilifurahi waliponiambia tuende nyumbani mwa Bwana. Tuende nyumbani mwa Bwana. Nyumbani mwa Bwana. Tuende nyumbani mwa Bwana. Nyumbani mwa Bwana. Nilipiga shangwe na nderemo waliponiambia baraka tuende nyumbani mwa Bwana. Nilipiga shangwe na nderemo waliponambia baraka tuende nyumbani mwa Bwana. Huko kwa baba yangu kuna uzima, matunda ya wokovu tutachuna, neema na baraka zitufuate sisi. Huko kwa baba yangu kuna uzima, matunda ya wokovu tutachuna, neema na baraka zitufuate sisi. Nyumbani 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 mwa Bwana. Nyumbani 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 mwa Bwana. Nyumbani 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 mwa Bwana. Nyumbani mwa Bwana. Nilifurahi waliponiambia tuende nyumbani mwa Bwana. Nilifurahi waliponiambia tuende nyumbani mwa Bwana. Tuende nyumbani mwa Bwana. Nyumbani mwa Bwana. Tuende nyumbani mwa Bwana. Nyumbani mwa Bwana. Nyumbani mwa Bwana. Nyumbani mwa Bwana. Oyo. Oyo yo 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 yo. Oyo. Oyo yo 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 yo. Mtayarisha moyo wako na nafsi yako, atia naye ipasavyo, ili tukipatana huko. Nyumbani 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 mwa Bwana. Nyumbani 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 mwa Bwana. Nyumbani 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 mwa Bwana. Nilifurahi waliponiambia tuende nyumbani mwa Bwana. Nilifurahi waliponiambia tuende nyumbani mwa Bwana. Tuende nyumbani mwa Bwana. Nyumbani mwa Bwana. Tuende nyumbani mwa Bwana. 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 Nyumbani mwa Bwana.
Bwana, nimekuja mbele zako, nimeleta sifa na shukrani tele. Usifiwe Mwokozi wangu, usifiwe milele. Nimekuja mbele zako na sifa tele moyoni, Baba. Maana wewe ni sababu ya kuishi kwangu, Baba. Umekuwa Mungu wa agano kwangu, mimi sina shaka na yale umesema. Nikiwa nawe yote ni salama kwangu, Baba. katika giza na hofu na kwenye matope niliteleza. Kwa macho yako ukanitazama, kwa mkono wako ukaniokota. Walamu nayo elekelinga iyawe. Walamu nayo elekelinga iyawe. Usifiwe Baba.
We can't continue to keep on living like this.
You made it, sweetie. Now Gonzalo will never find his money again. Never.
Lionel can't do that to you. No, he can't leave with the money that is mine and my sons to inherit. No.
I want to be with you and with our children. Because for me, Mao will be like my son.
That's why I'm backing her up with this marriage, and I am more than happy to do it. You do understand what I'm saying, right?
Only have to find a way. And what could be better than to take away what you love the most?
The 2022 Commonwealth Games will be hosted in Birmingham, United Kingdom from the 28th of July through the 8th of August 2022. Team Kenya is set to make its 17th appearance at the Games. Kenya will contest for medals in several disciplines, among them athletics, boxing, hockey, rugby, weightlifting, wheelchair basketball and parasports, among others. Watch the Games live on KBC Channel 1. KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
All right. Exactly 4 days to the polls. We are literally at the home stretch of this elections, and there's a lot of conversations out here, particularly when it comes to just trying to ensure that we maintain peace now, during, and even after the election. This is what you're set to interrogate with my guests this morning, who are actually in their own defined research as much as they carry, heavy other titles underneath their names, but just trying to interrogate where we are as a country in terms of preparedness and moving forward. How can we maintain peace in this elections? I'm joined by Professor Kithinji Kinyua to my extreme right, who is a lecturer at Sophia University in Tokyo, Japan, as well as just a lecturer of matters to do with politics and culture in the same university. Right next to him, which is to my immediate right, that is Dr. John Mwangi, who is a senior researcher at Glossips. Gentlemen, karibu sana to the program.
Thank you.
Before we delve deeper into the issues, let's just start from that research bit, because ideally you play a big role when it comes to matters research, and we know that yesterday, being the 3rd of August, was actually the last day for pollsters to either conduct or release polls. That is within our laws, and there's a lot of conversations out here, particularly in respect to how these polls are conducted, the sample size they use, the believability of the polls at the end of the day. I mean, we have had instances, not just in Kenya, but even beyond, whereby what is on the polls might not negate what exactly turns out to election. So that again bridges the gap of believability. Let me start with you, Daktari. What do you make of this, just given from a research perspective?
First of all, thank you, and thanks for that perspective. I think opinion polls, if they're conducted scientifically, in the sense that there's a particular sampling frame that is adopted, a representative sort of sample, because you cannot sample everybody for logistical and other concerns. Yes. But they do give, if they're conducted in the proper scientific way, they do give a sense of what is to be expected. Yes, we might talk about who was polled and how the process was polled, but I believe if the process, you have a clear sampling frame, you have articulated the key issues, and then of course you have thought about the demographics, who are you polling, is it representative, and so on. So it's possible that you can get to a closer approximation of the perspectives or the perceptions of a population at a particular time, but also bearing in mind that different dynamics also change. If you're conducting a poll very close, there might be other dynamics. Issues are shifting, and so on. But I would say if the process is conducted, in that proper manner, it's very much possible to come to a closer approximation. Of course, we have to be clear that opinion polls also have a margin of error.
Yes, +1, -1.
Plus or minus 1. And then also interesting, if you've seen all these polls, there's something around the category that is, it's called the undecided.
Yes.
So you might be polling 40% or 45%, but there's also a category that has not sort of properly made up their mind. So all those are sort of factors that need to count when we are evaluating these polls. Thank you.
Well said. I mean, and you just talked about the undecided, and let me come to you, Prof, because just again looking by what InfoTrack released yesterday, putting the candidates of whichever percentage they have gotten therein, according to that particular poll, we still have undecided of 6%, and according to what they say, that this has the ability to tilt the vote whichever way it might go at the end of the day. But just again, going back to what you're talking about, we have had instances, even just the candidates themselves saying that the polls do not really quite reflect what is there. Some even saying that they are doctored, some they're saying that they've been paid to actually deliver some of these polls. And we know they are critical because also they shock the decision in which the country is headed, and we also know where we stand, particularly in terms of elections altogether and preparedness. You have come to this country as a researcher as well. What do you make of all of this?
First of all, thank you for having me on the show. I'm delighted to be here. I think we should begin from the fact that politicians have the ability to influence, make us believe certain things are true, and those things might not be true. And one of the things we see with the political class is them wanting us to believe that science can also be politicized, which is also true. But I think how to look at opinion polls, first of all, should be that this is a scientific process and we respect science. Mm-hmm. So even before we talk about whether it's politicized or working for a certain politician or a certain political arrangements, we should be able to convince people that opinion polls is a scientific exercise and we should be able to rely on science to inform our decisions. The reason why we have opinion polls is because, people went out there conducting research. So people who do research like myself, I need to convince people that, research is a credible process. Mm-hmm. And, research has brought us a lot of solutions. So that's where we should begin from. Mm-hmm. But also we should go to the second question, which is, so what can politicians do with science? Which is the question about the same dimension of what can politicians do with tribes? Mm-hmm. What can politicians do with the region? We have seen that in these elections also. What can a politician do with economic status of the people? Mm-hmm. So I think to me the problem is not the polls themselves, mm-hmm. but it's the believability on this, the process. And I want to convince people that you should trust science.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we keep saying you should trust these institutions. You just can't keep doubting at the end of the day. But still, again, on that research bit, before we get to even the peace aspect, but still on that research bit, and I want to bring you on this one, Daktari. We are over 50 million in this country in terms of population. Just the other time, I think it was Mizani, if I'm not wrong, who had a sample size of 2,000. Yesterday, Infotrack on their polls said that they used a sample size of 6,000, just for the better understanding of Kenyans, because again, we also know fully well we cannot use the 53 or the 50 plus million Kenyans that we are. So there's definitely have to be a sample size that has to be used. But what informs this? Again, to just ensure that Kenyans really understand that we need to believe this polls when they come, or we need to trust in these institutions at the end of the day.
Well, thanks for that. I want to believe that in the science of opinion polling, again, I'll go back to the question of representativeness. Mm-hmm. When you have, a population of about, we only here thinking about the number of registered voters ideally, yep. Even though the population would be about 52 million or so. Mm-hmm. By scientific standards, anything above 2,000 is a fair representation of a population like that. And then of course you have to break it down, and I think I've followed some of the debates on opinion polls. So they also break them by demographics, by age, by region. Sometimes they might also push some bit of education. Mm-hmm. They might also have a bit of issues that are affecting the poll. So I think, and I think there was a commentary I saw a few days back that did not actually also show a very significant difference in terms of results, whether you had 2,000 or 6,000 people polling. The margin of difference was very minimal. But coming back to the perspective you raise, and I'm not too familiar with the scientific process that I think the one that you mentioned, but it's, I would say there's a sense in which we also have to be careful about how we read opinion polls. And I think when they release the opinion polls, they of course will disclose, for instance, the period in which they conducted them, how they conducted them. Was it by a telephone survey, which is acceptable? Was it by a questionnaire? And as with all scientific processes, even though my colleague here is mentioning that, we need to trust science, what is important is the credibility of that process. Of course, besides how different actors might want to frame the issue, because I think we've also seen across the board that people interpret opinion polls on the basis of how they seem to be favoring them. If they're favoring their
Then
side,
it's a good poll.
It's a good poll. But I think here, as researchers, as social scientists, I believe we should think about how did you arrive at that decision, but also appreciate that individuals in a social science context also carry with them certain biases, and because of that, that's why we need to think about multiple other sources, and I'm glad all these opinion polls, the opinion polling companies and organizations have been conducting, different polls, and so we can see a bit of, there's not of a big variance per se, and if you follow the trends, you could see, of course, some candidates have been either going up or down over time, and also given the different dynamics. I think around, for instance, around May, before the coalitions had announced their running mates, the polls were a little different. But when the running candidates, the running mates of these coalitions are announced, so again a few dynamics have kept shaping. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you can agree that various issues tilt the opinions in a different way depending.
Yes.
Okay. As an observer, Prof, when you look at this year's election, the 2022 election, and again contrast it to the previous one, how would you view the level of calmness, preparedness?
Thank you for that. Before I go to that, I wanted to echo some of the things he has said.
Okay.
That the process is important, as he has said here, because this is not this is a social sciences category, and people must also be kind of attentive to the fact that unlike you're not going to a laboratory to test things. This is not quantitative per se. Most of it should be qualitative. So the things coming into place are different factors, and so when you judge the outcome of the polling, also you should have that in mind, that this is, yes, the category of social sciences. It might be a little bit different from what we may have in quantitative analysis. So the qualitative is an important aspect. Now, preparedness. I think I am optimistic about this year's election for many reasons. I have been in the field. I just came from there this morning, and unlike the other times, I see people more calm. Maybe that I might be biased, but I think from the region that I have observed. Yeah, from what I've observed, people are more calm. People are more. They don't seem to give like a life and death kind of they are not taking it as a life and death kind of a matter, which is a good thing in our political competition, because it means that people are not ready to die for politicians. And I think Kenyans are coming to that sense of, we have political competition, it's healthy, but I don't have to commit my full life to that. So I have observed that, and it's very encouraging. I have also seen some kind of I don't care attitude with especially the young people who go like, we have been doing this thing forever and it doesn't seem to have any value to us. And I think that's something that maybe people involved in political science training need to pay attention to.
And we'll come to that. I mean, because also when you look at how this elections had been shaped, is that there was a heavy reliance on the young voter, but that didn't quite seem to be the case. Just going by the numbers and the figures that IBC presented for the young voter. We'll come to that in a bit. But talk to us about GLOSEP's Daktari and its mandate, what exactly it does.
Thank you. So, at the Global Center for Policy and Strategy, which we abbreviate as GLOSEPs, we are a leading think tank that is focused on action research both for policy influence and strategic formulation. We do work, with different experts, policy experts and so on. And our business, of course, is to shape public policy in different aspects. We work across 5 pillars currently. We work around security and defense. We work on foreign policy. We work on transnational organized crimes. We work on development, but also governance and ethics. And I believe this is, the point and the moment to think about the governance around elections, but also how we secure our nation. Kenya is a regional player. It's a member of the global community, and so as elections come and go, we need to remain stable and so on. So we are really in the business of engaging in policy influence and strategic formulation in pursuit of our mission, which is to engage in global peace and prosperity. And so research, action research remains one of our key pillars. And we've done some work around elections, especially thinking around how do we secure elections, how do we take best practices from different contexts, and I'm happy we're having this conversation just a few days to the polls. Yes.
Yeah, well said. I mean, just as you're explaining that, you talked about also, as a country being a regional bloc, regional basis, and just the other day we saw the president launching the MV Uhuru 2, the shipyard there in Kisumu, and we know how important that is going to be, particularly in terms of our economy and, transportation of petroleum products, oil, particularly the East African bloc. And so this is why it's important for us to keep ensuring that we keep peace at all costs. It doesn't matter the circumstance, but we keep peace at all costs. Going just by what you're saying, then in aspects of governance, policy, as being a regional base, what has been a general assessment, even as you talk about securing elections, maintaining and keeping peace? What have you come across? What have you observed?
Thank you. At GLOSEPS, of course, as we work with different partners, and also, thinking about, the general context of our region, sort of limiting myself to, elections and peace within the region.
Yeah.
I mean, there are certain, conversations we've had, there's certain, analysis and research we've done. One is, I mean, as I had alluded earlier, the question of how do we secure this, and we have come to, we recently did a piece of research that looked at how to prevent electoral violence, and we were able to isolate a few things. One of the key things, and I think Professor Kithinji here has mentioned, has to do also with one of the things we've observed as a determinant with, matters electoral security, is how the Independent and Electoral Boundaries Commission conducts the whole process. So the conversations we've had, the perception surveys we've done, indicates to us that how the body conducts this process will be very important, bearing in mind, and there have been important conversations around electoral integrity, transparency, accountability, conformity to the rule of law, constitutionality, applying, the electoral processes. Because we have a history.
Yes, we do.
We have a history where we come from. And so that seems to be an important concern. But also, there's
this from the research.
Yes, from the research we've conducted. So that is an important concern. The other observation we've made through our research is really the place of public peace messaging. Peace is a currency, and of course we can debate around the question of what peace means. But I mean, peace is sort of everything we breathe, and I mean, we need to be in a state of calm, to be in a state of social cohesion and so on. So there have been concerns, and this is also something we observed through our research, that engagement with different stakeholders, around peace, the value of peace, and we, in academic circles, in peace studies, the argument is that peace is not merely the absence of war, it's not just, that a situation is calm, but so also thinking around how do we coexist? Of course, from 2007 and previous periods, in terms of our governance, there are certain, dynamics that come into place and impact on peace. For instance, we've always been talking about structural inequalities. Right now, questions around land, questions around identity, questions of, how do we access resources, how do we make our institutions strong so that we're able to, because elections, as we know, are just a peaceful way to transfer power. And so in terms of the credibility, but just going back to public messaging about peace, different stakeholders, whether it's religious leaders, civil society organizations, have been very concerned, and that's something we have thought, our research has documented as important. Let me mention a third point, and maybe just come to a conclusion here. The other beat that we observed is the question of hate speech and disinformation and misinformation, particularly on our social media spaces. On political rallies, I think there's a bit of restraint now, but I think the last couple of days to the election, you might see a bit of outburst on the political space, but if you on the online space, there's a lot of disinformation.
There's no regulation there.
There is regulation,
There is.
and of course, in our research, we've made recommendations with relevant bodies such as the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, the National Cybercrimes Committee, that's been focused on monitoring social media. Of course, so the point to be made, or the observation we made from our research, is that we need to really think more critically around how we regulate hate speech, how we promote social media restraint. We have a young demographic that perhaps is consuming news much more from Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and so on. And because we cannot properly, police those kind of spaces, I think it's important. So those are some of the observations we've made, and we're happy to discuss more as we move on this conversation. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you've presented quite good draft of issues that we need to, divulge into, as just you've said, continue with this conversation. But let me pick your mind on this one too, Prof, particularly on that aspect of valuing peace. And Dr. has put it very well that, absence of wars does not negate peace, and vice versa is correct. But looking at our history and where we've come from, particularly the 2007-2008 post-election violence, we recorded above 1,000 people that lost their lives. And when you look at the children and women that were affected, that number was slightly above 500. So we've had a history. And even during campaigns, we have witnessed, some form of violence here and there. Just the recent one being what happened in Jacaranda here in Nairobi. So what exactly is our problem as a country? Because ideally, just from where we've come from, we should be doing everything to ensure that we do not experience any form of violence. But that doesn't quite seem to be the case.
That's a hard question. And I want to put it like this. I think our problem is we do not understand politics. We think that politicians are the ones who should be teaching us politics. During political competition, we bring people to tell us this candidate is going to win over these other candidates. If you look at our media today, it's obsession of which coalition is going to win. I think in my small understanding, that is a misunderstanding of politics. Politics is life. It's the whole thing together. It's how we live our lives. And I think I agree with Mzee Moi on this, that siasa mbaya, maisha mbaya. Because I think he envisioned politics as not that time of people competing over ideas, but the whole process of how do we live as a country? Which direction do we want to take as a country? I don't think we take those questions beyond what we call politicking. And that's why we have people, especially political class, preaching to us about the need to keep peace during elections. I always wonder, why should that be an issue during the election, whereas after 9th, you go back to your, if you're a Kikuyu, you go back to your Eluo wife, or a Kisii wife and your a Kamba. So why does the issue of peace become an issue during these 3 months? I think the reason is because we have allowed politicians or the political class to take over our politics, which is wrong. And that's what I'm calling a misunderstanding of what political life should be. Politicians do not, in my understanding, they do not understand what politics is. And that's why they focus on this small aspect of competing for votes. Then we focus on, are you in camp A or camp B? If we take the conversation about our politics in our universities, then we come to realize that, yeah, actually, political life is more diverse, more deep than what we interpret it to be in most cases. But I also add that our problem beyond misunderstanding of politics is that we do not seem to emphasize on the need to the role that social sciences play in our lives. I think our country is becoming possessed with telling our young people that we have to get skills when we go to school. So when we take people to study in our universities, we are telling them that history is not important, it's not going to give you a job. We are telling them anthropology is not going to help you in any way because, you know, look at these fellas, they graduated with these social sciences and what do they have? And what you get out of that is a people that do not understand politics. People that need to be reminded to keep peace during the remaining 5 days. And that's where my worry is. Why should you be reminded to keep peace in the following 5 days and you've been keeping peace for the last 4 years? You've been living with your neighbor. Why should you be reminded that you shouldn't kill your neighbor? If you're being reminded that you shouldn't kill your neighbor, it means that, and you went to school, it meant that your school, your education was not complete. So I know we are talking about, you know, the values of skills and making sure that we graduate students who are able to fit in the job market. But again, to me, that's a misunderstanding of what education should do. Education should be able to prepare a person to go out there and live life in its fullness, which is, you may get a job, and fortunately, and you become prosperous because of that. You might not get a job because things are hard, but you live a wholesome life. You live a life with fulfillment. Understanding how to interpret when a politician says whatever he says. And it means you also don't follow, you know, when politicians just throw out ones there. So the reason why you have politicians throwing ones out there, it's also because this problem begins with our education. You know, we are not looking at, if it's politics as an example, we are not telling our students what exactly is politics. You know, we are possessed with coalition A as numbers. Coalition B is not going to win. You know, that's kind of a conversation, which is a very minor.
It's a skewed way of thinking.
Yeah.
So basically what you're saying is that it still runs down and goes back to basics, something that we miss. And you've given a very good example that if you've been keeping peace in 4 years, so what is the big deal about continuing to do that in the next 2 or 3 days? And talking about that aspect, you had also touched a bit on the hate speech, and you also touched a bit on that Daktari, and looking at also what NCAC had recommended just 5 days ago was to lock down Facebook. We also had that particular story in the dailies today, but the ministry, ICT, said that we are a free state, we cannot be able to do that. But again, you talk also about social media, and there may be regulation, but we cannot quite police what goes into that space. So how does this recommendation sit with you? Much as the ministry contravened it, but how does it sit with you? Would it have been a good form of recommendation, particularly during this time of election where we know that there's a lot of information going out there?
Thank you. The question of social media regulation is a tricky question across the board. Definitely, I believe the position not to ban social media spaces.
So you agree with the ministry?
I would support that perspective because it also sits with with our constitution,
yes,
our freedom of expression. But of course, we also have to be cognizant of the view that where your rights begin is also mine end in some way. I mean, the question of accountability of how we use these platforms, and this also goes back to the point raised by my panelist here. Our social values and skill sets and so on sometimes is just speaking to this question of social media misuse, for lack of a better word. And at Glossops, actually, we've really engaged with this question, thinking about how do you, how do you think around social media, disinformation across, the whole board. And it's not, of course, a Kenyan phenomenon. Mm-hmm. We saw that in the US elections, right? And the challenge a bit also with social media regulation, I think people, of course, need to have liberty, to express themselves.
Yeah.
The challenge, I believe, comes with regulation. I mean, we are dealing with artificial intelligence. We are dealing with automatic bots, in this space. So these are not humans, but they, of course, behind them are human beings engaging in this. So I think the point is, yes, regulation is important, the law is important, but at Glossops we also think that careful awareness about especially the ills, the side effects of it, right? And some people actually engage in this social media sort of misuse on the basis of misinformation. They're not fully aware that maybe, say, someone is sending you something on a WhatsApp group.
Case in point, the video we've been seeing around.
Yes. So someone is sending you something, and what do you do quickly? You just send it to your next WhatsApp group, or you post it on your Twitter handle, and that is also what creates. And then also this and my panelist here has mentioned why perhaps we don't need to talk about peace all the time. If we talk about social values and so on, someone will first have restraint, right? And that also explains the fact that, and we've also made similar recommendations that media houses are also very important actors in this space, but also now we have a good number of fact-checking organizations. So opening that wide analysis, and at Glossops we sort of engaged in these conversations in webinars in the past. I think a year ago we had a webinar that we're just looking at social media disinformation, because we think it's sort of, it's an important question to think about. So fact-checking organizations, creating awareness that information you post out there can be detrimental, to the general well-being, and at this time, it's not that I think we are over-obsessed with elections, but also going beyond this over-obsession, awareness, and different bodies, if it is the Communications Authority of Kenya, if it is the Ministry of ICT, the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, they have engaged with all these questions. But I think it all comes down to, because there are things really you cannot police.
Yeah.
Public awareness. Let's have conversations around disinformation, the deliberate, of course, the deliberate manipulation of information. Regulation is important, but let's create awareness so that, if you see a video, don't be quick to post it. Try and first verify it. And I think media organizations have a role to play in creating that literacy and awareness, yes. Thank you.
Well said. And as we wind down, Prof, I'll give you the last word. What will be your call to action? Because, I mean, we would keep talking about this and we keep having this conversation. We have a lot to exhaust, I mean, at the end of the day, because, yes, we agree that our social values might be the challenge, but we are here now. And this is what we keep talking about. We need to keep maintaining peace. So what will be your call to action?
I agree with you. We're here. So, and, you know, talking about we need to pay attention to our social, you know, value system. It's a tall order. But before I go to my comment, let me
very quickly yes.
talk about the idea of wanting to regulate, especially the social media. I think it's an absurd. I don't understand what kind of what informs that kind of a person to say that. But because when you see the changes we are undergoing and the transformation in this spurred by the technology, it's unimaginable to think about regulating in that sense. And I also use that term regulating because I also want to probably bring it to my last comment, which is we are possessed with the idea of policing and regulating things in this country. We have an obsession of, you know, how do we create peace during elections? We have to make sure people don't speak about specific things, people don't use specific terms. I honestly don't think those things work. When you tell people this terminology means this, those things do not work. We need to get back to encouraging people to learn about our culture. We have forgotten about our own. Sorry, I'm going back to the same value system because I do feel like we have stopped emphasizing on what do we value as a country, as a people, who are we as a people. And then we come to the conversation about our politics using that kind of a lens.
I hear you. I wish you had more time because even from what you've said, you've already opened up a different conversation that due to the constraint of time, we can't divulge into that. But nonetheless, I mean, thank you so much for coming. It has been quite insightful, just understanding also from your perspective what we need to do, at least to ensure that we maintain this. We need each other at the end of the day.
Maybe I should have ended by telling people get out and vote on Tuesday. There's nothing like these are two evils. No, you have a choice to make.
All right.
Choose one.
I hear you. And that has been Professor Kithinji Kinyua, lecturer at Sophia University, Tokyo. In Tokyo, Japan, lecturer of politics and culture. Right next to him is Dr. John Mwangi, who is a senior researcher at GLOSEPS, and obviously focus on peaceful election has formed the center of our conversation. Thank you so much for watching. Good place to end. Good morning, Kenya. Till next week. Have a beautiful morning.
Kupata heshima kama skiza tune kwenye simu yako, bonyeza *811 *759 hash.
Ukiwa mtu wa heshima, utaheshimiwa. Ukiwa mtu wa kupeana, nawe utapewa. Ukiwa wewe ni wa kudharau wengine, utadharauliwa. Ukiwa wa chuki, malipo ni yale yale. Ikiwa wewe ni mtu wa haramu, vile vile itakupata tu. Na kama wewe ni mtu wa kushauri kwa hekima,
kupata heshima, bonyeza *811 *759 hash. *811 *759 hash.
We can't continue to keep on living like this.